Hello, everyone. Happy Sunday. That's right, today is Sunday. We're a day late from our normal read, but that is the way it goes sometimes. Because I have other things sometimes that come up on Saturdays to do. Now, I rarely have things on Sundays, so I may have to consider whether changing this to Sundays rather than Saturdays is the right way to go. But I may ask out to all of you to see what your thoughts are around that possibility. You guys, if you think it might be good, you think it might be a possibility that you would enjoy or could think of, then feel free to throw something into the chat and let me know. But if you'd rather it stays on Saturdays, you can let me know that as too. You can let me know that is too. Let me know that too. Just tell me which way you want it. I would be happy to help oblige. All right. I am reading The Blacksmith's Boy by Bruce Buchanan. We are just getting started. We'll be starting in chapter 32. All the previous chapters are available on the YouTube channel. But I am getting ready, Jasmine, to give us a recap of what we had on our last stream, which was on Tuesday. So on Tuesday, we covered chapters 26 through 31. And here is where we were at. So our group arrived at Oso Creek and finds the cotton fields eerily empty and devastated. They encounter fleeing serving class families and investigate the mysterious blight damage. Bach uses folk magic to examine the soil and the sorcerer's identity as a powerful, deliberate spell cast by a Masork sorcerer. So this is a fantasy novel. The idea is basically that there are two different kind of classes of people. There are your serving class, your royalty class. Royalty uses one type of a magic. Serving class uses a different type of a magic. Those that have the aptitude to do so. And there is a group right now who has gone in and attacked some of the land within the country. And it is up to a whole bunch of royals and one serving class guy, Bach, to go and investigate. They brought Bach because he's got the folk magic that the serving class uses. And because the serving class deals a lot with the land, in case it was not the other type of magic, then he would be able to hopefully determine what was going on. That's kind of our overarching story here. And so the princess is leading this group of nobles and Bach, and they have traveled. They've encountered some issues along the way. They found out during a last attack that Bach actually had the ability to cast noble class magic. So exploring that kind of an idea and, the trials and tribulations that they have gone through to get here. Very quick, brief overview. So that was chapter 26. They arrived in Oso, found out that it was a Masork sorcerer who they think casts a spell. Chapter 27, the sorcerers confirmed the true culprit behind the blight, masked his own spell sense with that of the Masork sorcerer, and it was Salandrian, the dean of the House of Magic. Isabella is horrified and demands they return to Ithanel immediately to warn her father and the kingdom. So they were going to travel to the place that had been attacked. The people who perpetrated the attack knew that they were traveling there, and so is trying to stop them because they don't want their plot uncovered. Our team made it there, and that's where we're getting into right here and kind of covering. That's where they found out that the true culprit is Salandrian, who happens to be the head of the Dean of Magic for the Royal Sorcerers. Not who you, and a close advisor to the king. Kessler Perez. Hello, hello. And so that's kind of where we're at. So they had just discovered that it was the royal advisor who is doing this. Not a good thing for them. Chapter 28 was the group is suddenly ambushed by 4 Scions of Sonorian sorcerers. Explosions of magic fill the air as Bach, Isabella, and the others fight desperately for their lives. Then 29 covered after the fierce battle, the group fled into the dark woods. They realized that Tovano, who is one of their sorcerer members, is missing, but they must press onward while grappling with the betrayal they've uncovered. Chapter 30, the group is suddenly confronted by a band of Masork marauders in the woods. Weapons are drawn and the situation turns deadly as Bach and the others face yet another threat. And then we ended on 31, which was Isabella and Kotarian gather the group and perform a powerful chant to shield and prepare them. Bach and the others brace for whatever comes next as the threats closed in. Basically, they got away from the Masork sorcerers by casting an invisibility thing. At the very end of it, the leader of the Masork marauders basically wishes them well on their journey to try to stop the blight that is not only hitting Ithanel, but it's hitting Masork as well. And that is where we will dive back in. As a reminder to everybody, all of the previous chapters are available on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@SirArminius. So if you have missed any of it, you can stop out there, pick up on where the book is at, take a listen through. It's all free to listen to on the YouTube channel, or you can support the author by picking up the book on Amazon. You can pick it up through Wild Ink Publishing. The ebook is actually cheaper there than it is through Amazon, or you can check out the author at brucebuchananauthor.com. I will be recording all of the chapters tonight, so I will be happy to engage with you in between chapters. But while I am recording, I will focus on the reading. And now, it's a little long, but the chapters are relatively short. Despite the fact that we're in chapter 32, this is reading session number 6 right now. So the first 31 chapters plus the prologue took me 5 reading sessions. My reading sessions are typically about an hour and a half to 2 hours. That's actually not terribly long at all for a book so far. Now, we've got a bit left to go, but it reads easy, and it's definitely an engaging story as you go in here. I do these readings for independent authors, and it's a free service that I provide to them because they may not have an audiobook already. If they did, they probably wouldn't have come to me. But I basically provide them an audiobook type of a service for free. It allows me to practice my voiceover and narration at the same time as expanding the audience of those who might be interested in their book, because indie authors are not only the writers, editors, designers, oftentimes the artists, they also have to be the marketers. Indie authors have to do it all, and they may be good at most of those, but marketing is a side that a lot of them have a harder time on. It's why I try to help. And I love the ability to do this. So, sit back, relax, and prepare to enjoy as we dive into another reading of The Blacksmith's Boy by Bruce Buchanan, read for you by Tim Maloney. Again, all chapters up till now are all available on the YouTube channel. Tonight's chapters will be available after the stream. I record them and I get them uploaded, so look for them tomorrow morning. And here we go with Chapter 32. The circle of black-clad sorcerers gathered once again inside the glass foundry in Naseem. Salandrian, the true leader, paced around the center of the circle, his arms folded behind his back. The Scions of Sonorian stood with their heads down, hands clasped at their waists. No one spoke. Finally, the 3 young sorcerers who had fought Bach, Isabella, and the others entered the foundry. Again, the spell masking their true forms peeled away once they closed the foundry door. This time, however, they dragged a heavy canvas sack, which they slung across the stone floor toward the circle.
So, you failed.
Salandrian, true leader, Salandrian stammered. How did
Magic? No, I could tell by the look on your faces that you failed. Princess Isabella and her mixed-class band of idealists still live. Tell me what happened, and spare no detail.
We attacked without mercy, as you have taught us. Alandrian's lower lip shook as she spoke. We almost had them, but they escaped into the forest. We lost their trail near the border.
And Daronian? I assume he is dead.
Yes, killed by the rich boy with his bow and arrow.
Tell me. And this is perhaps the most important question you shall ever answer, Alandrian. Did they uncover the extent of our plans?
Salandrian stood in front of the young sorcerer, his face inches from hers. I do not know, true leader. She turned away, then looked to the floor, only to be jerked into the air by a violent variation of Turangian's territorial transport. Salandrian thundered.
If you don't know, then why should I let you live?
Alandrian dangled 10 feet above the foundry floor. Her legs kicked involuntarily in midair, and her hands clutched at the tendrils of translucent blue-green energy wound around her neck and chest. Because... Through the crushing pain, Alandrian gestured to the canvas sack, her fingers twitching as she pointed to the bag. I brought someone who can tell us. Her two companions pulled away the bag to reveal Tovano. The old man moaned as he drifted in and out of consciousness. Salandrian set the gasping young sorcerer back on the floor.
You may have redeemed yourself after all, Alandrian.
He stepped over to Tovano and knelt over the delirious old man.
Good evening. I trust your journey wasn't too uncomfortable.
Tovano blinked to clear his head.
Salandrian? But how? This isn't an illusion spell. You truly are different. Changed.
Indeed I am. Younger, stronger, more vital. As for how, I will just say the old scrolls and dusty tomes of Sonorian Square contain ancient secrets that my small-minded so-called superiors could never imagine.
He pushed back the sleeves of his jacket.
But you could, and didn't you?
Tovano covered his mouth with his hand and coughed.
I warned King Isviano that the House of Magic had become too powerful, too corrupt. I suspected one of you might be responsible for the atrocities in Naseem, but I needed proof.
And did you and the princess find such proof at Oso Creek? Will she be able to reveal my conspiracy to the king?
Tovano shook his head.
I'll tell you nothing. I've lived a long enough life, and I'll die knowing I helped purge the kingdom of you and your empty-minded followers.
Salandrian stood and gestured for the Scions of Sonorian to pull Tovano into the middle of the circle.
My acolytes, I have an unexpected lesson for you. How to extract information from an unwilling mind.
He leaned over, so only Tovano could hear him.
This is one of those old, forgotten spells you feared someone might uncover. Thankfully, Tovanian, it is an effective and highly pleasurable enchantment. Pleasurable for me, that is. For you, it will be severely painful.
And there is 32. Hey, look, we found out what happened to Tovano. Tovano was captured by the Scions of Sonorian, which is not good for him when you have evil, power-hungry magicians ready to do whatever they want to do to get information from you. Let's see how he can hold out. All right, checking really quick to see if any questions came in on other channels. No, and no. All righty, so right back at it then. We jump back in with Chapter 33. Bach and his companions crossed back into Imarina that evening. They intended to retrace their route back to Ithanel as quickly as they could. They had to return to the king and the royal council before Salandrian and whatever corrupt forces he had assembled within the House of Magic had a chance to strike from the inside. But they could only go so far so fast and needed to rest their horses and themselves on Naseem's outskirts. Wingate found a barn left abandoned by farmers fleeing the blight. He tied their horses up and the group went inside for a few precious hours of sleep. This gave Bach a chance to minister to Karagian's injuries again. His infection remained severe, despite Bach's attempts to treat it on the road. Karagian even winced when Bach changed his bloody dressing, something the young healer doubted he would ever see. Karagian drifted off into an uneasy, Yorka-induced sleep. Bach stretched out on a bare patch of dirt beside his patient. Using his rolled-up shirt as a pillow, his eyes quickly became too heavy to keep them open. He woke to find the others already stirring, even Karagian, although the sun had not yet risen. Umra lugged in a bucket of water from a nearby stream and filled everyone's cup as Isabella gathered them together.
This is where we must divide our group.
Divide our forces? Aventil looked up from his drink. But why?
We must get word back to my father. That is our mission and my priority. But I cannot abandon Tovano. If there is any hope of rescuing him, I must try.
Bach nodded. He wanted to get back to Ithanel, stop the blight, and protect his family. But Isabella is right. We can't leave Tovano. What if he has fallen into the clutches of the Scions? I couldn't face Mother and Father having abandoned a friend. She looked to the two royal guardians.
Wingate, I need you to ride on to Ithanel. Karagian, we are going to get you to a healer in Naseem.
Karagian flexed his wounded shoulder, testing his arm.
Your Majesty, the king put me in charge of your safety, and I intend to see that job through.
Isabella held up her hand as if she anticipated his answer.
Commander, you are the embodiment of loyalty above all. But I am here, and my father placed me in charge of this field mission. That means my orders countermand his instructions back in Ithanel, correct?
Aye, Your Majesty,
he grumbled softly.
That they do.
Very well, then. You may ride with Wingate into the city, where you will go to the first reputable healer you may find. May the Exalted One ride with you.
The group stepped outside the barn just as the first rays of daylight cracked the sky. The two guardians saluted their crown princess and rode away toward the city. Their horses' hooves kicked up dusty clouds as they raced toward Ithanel. When they were out of earshot of the guardians, Kotarian cornered Isabella, his hands waving above his head.
We should go with Wingate. Returning to Ithanel immediately is our only goal. You have said so yourself.
Isabella didn't raise her voice to match his animated ire.
Of course, the kingdom's safety matters most. But I believe we can accomplish both goals here. If you were held captive, would you expect us to attempt to free you?
Kotarian looked to the sky.
Well, the house's shining light wouldn't have been captured by the those back-of-the-class nitwits. But if I was, I would expect you to follow your father's orders.
Not now, Kotarian. Why must you always assert your opinions at such unwelcome moments? But Bach didn't know what to say that wouldn't make the situation worse. Besides, Isabella was more than capable of expressing her own authority. She spoke slowly and softly, but her small hands clenched into fists at her side. Careful, Kotarian. Do not forget who is in command here.
Exactly. Your father. He sent you to carry out his wishes, just as the house sent me to represent our order.
Isabella waited until Kotarian had finished, then paused briefly to take a deep, measured breath. My father appointed me to carry out his wishes under my leadership. The goal is the same, but the means to achieve it are mine. That means the king trusts my judgment, and my decision is... Kotarian interrupted the princess.
If the king was here, he would agree that your affection for Tovano clouds your judgment. If you weren't so... That's enough!
Aventil grabbed the startled sorcerer's collar.
Shut your smirking mouth.
Let him go, Aventil.
Isabella tried to wrench his hand away from Kotarian's throat to no avail, but the sorcerer squirmed away.
The jealous boyfriend act. How predictable.
Kotarian laughed in Aventil's face.
The princess and I are two trained sorcerers engaged in conversation. This is far above your intellectual level, rich boy. Stand aside until the princess gives you something to keep you busy while we do the important work. I suppose she learned that tactic from your parents. Wham!
Aventil delivered his response with a hard right to Kotarian's jaw. Mouth agape, Bach watched the sorcerer slump to the ground, momentarily dazed. Blood and saliva dribbled from his mouth. When Kotarian recovered his bearings enough to realize what had happened, he touched his bleeding lip with his fingers and ran his tongue under his lower lip to make sure he hadn't lost any teeth. Bach stepped in front of Aventil, who shoved him away, but the merchant's son didn't advance toward Kotarian. Instead, he stood where he was, fists drawn and waiting for the sorcerer's response.
Stop it, Isabella cried. Please, do not fight.
But if Kotarian heard her, he did not care.
Oh, you are going to regret that, rich boy.
He flipped the blood from his fingertips to the ground and wiped his hand on his trousers.
I'd almost forgotten how much I hated being struck. Almost.
Kotarian slowly sat up. The lack of inflection in his voice terrified Bach. Kotarian sounded like someone resigned to performing a horrible but necessary task, the way Bach's mother spoke before slaughtering a chicken. Kotarian stood and dusted off his clothes. He whispered an enchantment, and a halo of blue-green energy engulfed his body. His hands were no longer visible, encircled by his mystic power. Even his eyes turned blue-green, transformed by the mighty forces that gathered around him.
Kotarian, I'm sorry for hitting you. Truly, I should not have done that.
Aventil backed away.
Hit me back if you must, but please, this has gone too far.
But Kotarian listened to nothing except the rage racing through his mind. He stopped his advance and raised a glowing hand. He meant to kill Aventil. Bach was sure of it, and if bloodlust consumed the battle-trained sorcerer, even Isabella could do little to stop him. All Bach could do was to appeal to Kotarian's higher instincts. He hoped they listened.
Wait, please!
Bach placed his own body between the sorcerer and his intended target.
This mistake would overshadow all your hard work and sacrifice.
You could never undo it.
Step aside, Bok, Kotarian warned. You meddle in things that are not your affair.
But they are. These matters, this mission, concern all of us. Every single person in Imarina. And we need you, Kotarian. That isn't an appeal to your vanity. It is the truth. Kotarian wouldn't look at Bok or drop his still charged hand, but he listened.
Perhaps, but I once swore that I would never again be a victim.
Bok met Kotarian's eyes. Aventil is not the rightful target of your vengeance. No, he never should have hit you, and you never should have spoken to him the way you did, or the way you have to me, or to Umra, or so many others who have done nothing to threaten you. Kotarian cocked his head to the side, awaiting Bok's next words. The young healer set his jaw. Yes, you have made yourself powerful, Kotarian, but don't forget what it feels like to be powerless. Kotarian looked away, then lowered his hand. The blue-green aura around him quickly dissipated.
I suppose you truly cannot complete this mission without me.
Kotarian then turned to Aventil.
Rich boy, consider yourself lucky to have a friend as loyal as Bok. I wish to be alone now, but when it is time, I shall be ready.
He walked away, down a path toward the nearby creek. The rest of the group exhaled the tension they had been holding in. Bok, that was amazing and brave. Isabella rushed to his side. Your compassion has served us well this day. He smiled at her kind words, despite his racing pulse. Everyone has put themselves in harm's way on this trip. I suppose it was my turn. Isabella took his left hand into both of hers and held it for a moment. As nice as her soft hand felt in his, Bok realized it was a gesture of friendship. Nothing else. But Aventil shot them both a stern glance. By all means, attend to Bok. No need to concern yourself with my well-being, Isabella. I'm fine, especially for a man who was nearly reduced to a pile of fine particles by a lunatic. Isabella spun, her feet planted wide. Whose fault would that have been? You hit him, Aventil.
By the Exalted One! You act like he was justified in trying to murder me.
Of course not, foolish boy. She practically spat the word boy. Kotarian did everything he could to goad you, and you were oh so willing to bite at the bait. He challenged your precious manhood, and nothing else mattered. Bok's fingers tingled. Please, both of you, don't do this. Aventil rolled his eyes. Let's be honest, Isabella. You don't want a partner. You want someone who will do anything the Crown Princess asks without question, like Bok does. No offense intended, Bok, but we all know that is the truth. Bok said nothing because it was, in fact, true. Even if she was withholding information about his past. But hearing Aventil frame my loyalty to Isabella in such a pathetic light hurts. After all, the merchant's son is my friend, too. This is not about Bok. It is about you, Aventil. You hardly are the only one whom Kotarian has taunted. But rather than act the bigger man as Bok has done, you behave like a pub hooligan brawling over a card game. Aventil's pale face flushed crimson. You truly are angrier with me than with Kotarian. Whose side are you on exactly? Yes, I am angrier with you. Whatever he is, Kotarian will not be Prince Consort one day. This is not some rich boy's game. Actual lives depend on our efforts. I know you are just a month shy of 19 summers, but it is time that you grew up, Aventil.
Just stop it.
Bach did not want to see such anger between two people he cared for so much. The stress of their plight weighed on them all. Now it seemingly tore them apart. Oh, is that right, Your Majesty? He sniffed, letting her formal title hang in the air. You don't think I'm aware of the stakes? On a mission I volunteered to serve on, so that I could be by your side? His voice cracked. I know. Being crown princess is a difficult job, and you are devoted to your duty. But sometimes I wish you realized the rest of us have our own burdens to carry. Ah, Kotarian almost turned Aventil into a dust of fine particles. That would have sucked for him. So, what do you guys think of the story so far? Are people enjoying it? Are you enjoying it? And this is the important part. Do you like it? Do you really, really like it? Oh, oh, happy days! I hope you guys are enjoying it. As we read through, as a reminder, all of these chapters are being recorded and will be available on the YouTube channel a little bit later this evening, as well as all the previous chapters which are already on the YouTube channel. Oh, where are, I had a, oh, I had an unmuted tab somewhere that was trying to come through. As I clicked through to look through the different streams to see if anybody else had any questions or comments or anything else, I accidentally unmuted one of them. All right, everyone. Well, let us get back to the book, shall we? You know you want to, you know you like to, with Chapter 34. Isabella and Aventil walked in separate directions. Like Otarian, they needed a moment alone. Bach knew they would return soon. Too much was at stake for them to dwell on personal feelings for long. But we're falling apart when we need to band together most. At this rate, we're doing Salandrian's work for him. Sure enough, the group soon reassembled. But Aventil wore an unfamiliar frown. Kotarian stood cross-armed when Isabella called for their attention. She didn't look in Aventil's direction, nor would he stand near her. We only can allow ourselves a few hours to find Tilvano. At that point, we must return to Ithanel as well. Bok, you will come with me and patrol the north area of the river. Gladly. But what are we looking for? Naseem wasn't the size of Ithanel, but it wasn't Sola Valley either. Finding a clue about their lost friend in the city in such a short time wouldn't be easy. I'm not sure, my friend, she admitted. I only know that we must try. Umra provided a voice of optimism among the stunned and somber group. I know these streets as well as anybody, Your Majesty, and I got contacts in every corner of the city. If your teacher is stored away anywhere in Naseem, we'll find that hidey hole. When Isabella announced Kotarian and Aventil would be paired together, the young nobleman pointed a gloved finger at his lover. What? You are aware that he tried to kill me just this very day? Kotarian laughed as he uncorked yet another bottle of red wine he pilfered from the Gurternal's wine cellar. That's a bit of an exaggeration, rich boy. Did I want to kill you? Perhaps not. Did I think of killing you? I suppose I did. And that took the situation farther than it should have gone. He took a drink and let his eyes linger in Aventil's direction. But had I truly tried to kill you, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Kotarian, enough, Isabella said. Umra says there has been an unusual volume of activity in the manufacturing sector near the river, with unfamiliar faces coming and going for reasons not readily apparent.
I told you, servant class folk talk to each other. Umra grinned broadly.
And you, Umra, shall accompany Aventil and Kotarian in patrolling that area. They need your keen eye and local knowledge,
Isabella added.
And if you can keep their pridefulness in line, all the better.
Aventil simply grunted and paced in a circle.
Fine. We'll work with the sorcerer. For Imarina and King Isbiano.
He walked away without a farewell for Isabella and mounted his horse. She watched and waited, but refused to speak first.
Well, this should be fun.
Kotarian returned to his mount. He pulled his gray jacket from his saddlebag, carefully smoothed out the wrinkles, and put it on, replacing the star-shaped pin on his lapel.
No point for subterfuge at this point. I'll stand or fall representing the house. Wait, who are we talking about? I'll stand representing the house.
Isabella waved her finger.
Remember, we meet back at Queen Imbiria's square in 4 hours. At that time, we will return home, with Tovano or not.
That bag of bones will owe me dearly, Kotarian said. I still say the best way to find him is to drag a fruit pie through the middle of town. Ah, well, I bid you farewell, for now.
Well, that one was a short chapter, so let's just dive right into Chapter 35.
Please, stop this at once. Have you lost your mind?
A few blocks away, Isabella asked that question of a mustachioed middle-aged man who, given his flour-covered apron, appeared to be a baker by trade. But instead of baking loaves, he heaved rocks through a neighboring store's window.
Sorry, lady, you'll have to fend for yourself.
He stuffed cured meats and wheels of cheese into a canvas sack. Isabella and Bach had ventured into a residential area of Naseem looking for the missing Tovano. Instead of clues, they found only chaos. The baker-turned-bandit ran off with his treasures, while down the street, 2 men engaged in an impromptu tug-of-war over the reins of a donkey cart. Bach thought he should intervene before the dispute became violent, but before he could, the larger of the men wrested control of the reins and rode off.
"Come back!"
the other man yelled.
"That's my vegetable wagon, you thief!"
Bach rode to the man's side. What is happening here? Where are the constables?
Constables? The man sneered. They was the first to leave town. Like a fool, I stayed behind. Well, the blight may not get me, but it looks like my neighbors will.
The man pointed at Isabella.
You know, you look just like
Princess Isabella. Yes, I know.
Ha! The man chuckled. You're a fine-looking woman, to be sure. But do you think our princess ever leaves the royal palace without running a comb through her hair or putting makeup on her face?
Well, I am certain there have been occasions. Perhaps if she was in a hurry.
She smoothed out her hair with her fingers.
Ah, you're no Princess Isabella. I was gonna say you look like a couple of them fugitives those strange folk was looking for the other day.
Strange folk? Bach asked.
I mean, they seemed awful serious. They stopped me in the street as I made my morning rounds. They acted like they come from Ithanel on behalf of the king, but they gave me a bad feeling, and I don't tell 'em nothing. Of course, even if ye are these fugitives, I don't guess it matters.
Not with all this happening. He gestured at the burning buildings and unchecked looting around them. Bach wondered if the Scions of Sonorian remained in Naseem. And if so, was Tovano even still alive? At some point, they would confront the Scions again. Bach hoped it would happen before it was too late for Imarina. The fires had spread to a nearby boarding house. The building hadn't been extensively damaged yet, so Isabella cast a spell and the flames quickly burned out. At least that is one problem I can solve. She and Bach continued riding down the street, dodging the occasional pile of broken glass or smashed crates. They paced their journey through the neighborhood, carefully looking around for clues, but also aware that their time to find Tovano was limited. But the streets framing Naseem's factory district all held the same mix of isolated fires, broken windows, and the occasional looter or frightened straggler who had not fled town with their neighbors. Bach found a sameness in the chaos, as incongruent as that seemed. I wish there was something more we could do, Bach. I never thought this could happen in Imarina, in my family's kingdom. I know. Bach pulled his horse close alongside Isabella's and, from his saddle, put his arm across her shoulder. She rested her head on him and closed her eyes to the devastation around her. Bach grieved at the destruction, too, knowing what it meant for the people who had lost their homes, their jobs, and perhaps more. But he also hurt for his friend, who took the widespread devastation afflicting their country as a personal failure of her leadership. The best way we can help these people is to stop Salandrian, Bach assured her. He's the root of this evil. But first, we find our friend. She straightened up and Bach pulled his arm away so they could both resume their search. However, the next 2 hours proved fruitless, only extinguishing a few fires and breaking up 2 fistfights. Wherever Tovano is hidden, it might as well be 1,000 miles away. Bach paused in front of a 3-story grain mill, where the river powered a giant wheel to turn the millstone that every day ground hundreds of pounds of corn from the nearby fields into meal. He snapped his fingers. If we could get up on the roof, we probably could see the entire street. He looked around the side of the mill. Maybe we can find an open door. There should be some stairs inside. And no need for stairs. With a wave of Isabella's hand, an invisible wind swept her and Bach off the ground. Like all children, Bach and Yata had pretended they could fly. Once Yata even climbed to the top of their house, stretched her arms wide, and leaped into a pile of straw. Watch me, Bach! I'm a red-tailed hawk! Her antics earned her a month of extra chores from their parents, but Bach still laughed every time he thought of his sister, suspended in midair in his imagination, diving into that hay pile. Tovano taught me the gentle float spell when I was a child. You will learn it soon. I used to employ this spell to sneak out of the palace tower and into my mother's gardens. My father was furious when he discovered. Tovano had to pretend he was disappointed as well. But as soon as my father left the room, Tovano admitted he was proud of me for mastering the spell. They reached the sloped roof of the mill, and the sense of weightlessness ended. Your father, the king, does he have the acumen? Or did your mother? No, neither was born with the acumen. Isabella peered over the edge of the roof and pointed to a man moving through a side street below. Who is that skulking about down there? Bach looked down. I can't say for certain, but he appears just to be trying to get somewhere safe without encountering any of that rough crowd we saw. Bach turned back to the conversation. So, where does your acumen come from? Well, my grandmother on my father's side, Queen Idalia, had the acumen, but she never bothered to develop it. She became too comfortable with the trappings of royalty to commit to something as challenging as high magic. When I learned I was endowed with the acumen, I promised I would not let it go to waste. But what about you, Bok? Do others in your family practice folk magic? Bok shook his head. They don't. But when I was young, Weni Khan tested all the children in our community, and I suppose she saw something in me. And like you, I didn't want to let that opportunity slip by. In my case, I didn't care for farming, and while I have done my share of blacksmithing, well, I'm terrible at it, if we are being honest. Becoming a healer seemed a better path for me. He looked across the city. They could see the entire street, and more, from their third-story perch atop the slanted wooden roof. Construction workers had used pine resin to seal the cracks between the shingles. This kept the grain and meal inside dry even on the rainiest of days. Bok admired the craftwork. He wondered, would the Baron of Nardu have a similar appreciation of skilled labor? If so, how long would that last around the courtly people of Ithanel? You were right, Bok. We can see forever from here. Isabella shielded the late afternoon sun from her eyes with her hand. Any sign of Aventil, Umra, and Kotarian? He sighed. No, I'm sure they're too far away. There are a few people out on the streets, but none of them appear to be likely to bring us closer to Tovano and the Scions. Yes, that's been the story of this mission, hasn't it? Every step we take puts us farther and farther from our goal. No, don't say that, Isabella, please. We uncovered Salandrian's plot, and once Wingate informs the king, he will put an end to this uprising. Your father will be proud of you. He is proud of you. And I know Aventil. He will. Isabella rolled her eyes. Aventil. I believe I have lost him too. Truth be told, he will consider himself grateful if he does not already. My duty to Imarina will be, and must be, my first love. I'm sorry. In recent days, Bok recognized that Isabella's presence made his stomach flutter and his thoughts scatter. He figured she had that effect on plenty of people. But he also knew that no matter what the truth may be about his origins, he was serving class raised. Imarina's noble class would never accept their princess having a romantic relationship with someone from his background. Far more importantly, she and Aventil are my friends. Their happiness means more than a teenage boy's fever dream. For the same reason, he wouldn't press Isabella about the secret he suspected she kept. Whatever it is, she would never hurt me, and right now, she needs my support, not an interrogation. I know you mean a great deal to Aventil, and he to you, Isabella. Perhaps the final chapter in your story together has not yet been written. Perhaps. She smiled and then quickly turned back to look for signs on Naseem streets that might lead them to Tovano. It truly is beautiful up here, despite the circumstances. I have not spent much time in Naseem. I suppose I always thought it paled when compared to my shining city of Ithanel. But the ancient buildings, the symmetry of the center city, the old oak trees lining every street. I need to spend more time here and throughout the kingdom. I will return soon if we succeed. When we succeed. Bok's mouth curled into a smile. Yes, that's it. Her hands smacked together. When you say it, I believe it. Tell me, Bok, why do I inspire so much faith in you? Because I see you for how you truly are. He became aware that his breathing and heart rate both had sped up, as if he had jogged up the side of the grain mill. I hope I can help you see it too. You have a way of saying exactly what I need to hear, Bok. Isabella turned her eyes to him and back to the horizon again.
But I am not the only one struggling with unanswered questions. Have you thought more about what Tovano shared with you?
Bach nodded. Accepting a barony and becoming his next pupil? An incredible opportunity, but it doesn't seem real and true. Kotarian says that while I have the acumen and am noble class born for sure, he is skeptical of my potential to be a sorcerer. Even an intensive course of study can't overcome 19 summers in Sola Valley, or so he tells me.
It is not Kotarian's decision to make, though, nor that of the house.
Isabella brushed the long curly brown hair from her face.
My father alone has the authority to reward baronies. Given the courage and loyalty you have displayed, you can be the Baron of Nardu if you choose.
This presented Bach with a clear path of opportunity. Accepting the king's offer would make Bach a wealthy man, to the point that his parents, Yata, and even Noji would never need to work again. He could give them the lives they deserved. It also provided the opportunity for Bach to develop his newfound skills in high magic and use those talents to their highest purpose. But most of all, it would mean there was a place for him with Isabella and Aventil. However, accepting this offer would mean leaving his family behind in Sola Valley. They would never agree to join him in the city, and he would miss out on his parents growing old, on Noji growing up, and on Yata reaching her full potential as a blacksmith, a mother, and a community leader. So, what should I do?
Follow your heart.
His confusion must have been clear on his face, as Isabella threw her arm over his shoulder, her gold bracelets clinking.
Where does my heart lead me? Choosing between my family and my friends seems an impossible decision.
But that it was a choice for another day. For a moment, he forgot about the mystery of his parentage, the questions about his future, the danger facing Imarina, and the life-or-death battle that undoubtedly lay ahead. He and Isabella stood on the rooftop, each silently supporting their beloved friend. In that moment, all was right in Bach Omat's soul. Ah, very nice. Engineer, thank you for following on YouTube. Glad to have you here. Hope you are enjoying, as I hope everybody else is enjoying the story as well. The reminder that all of these chapters will be available on the YouTube channel following the stream tonight. Up through channel 31 are available already, youtube.com/@SirArminius. And the chapters from tonight, however far we make it, will be available, later today, but by tomorrow morning at the latest. Because that's the way, I like it, And frankly, because, it could take YouTube a little bit to upload them. Because that is the way that YouTube likes it. But now, let us return to our story for the evening, as we continue to follow Bach, Aventil, Isabella, and crew. As we start, Chapter 36. Isabella! Aventil's voice called out from the street below. Bach looked down to see their three companions standing below. As long as he lived, and he hoped that would be for far longer than the trip back to Ithanel, he would cherish this time spent with Princess Isabella on the roof of a Naseem grain mill. But now it was time to refocus on the job at hand. Isabella nudged his arm.
I can get us back to the ground the same way we came up.
With a gesture, they floated down from the roof to the street. Isabella's shiny black boot kicked the dusty road.
I hope you three had better luck than we did. We found nothing, save a city on the edge of self-destruction.
We did, on Queen Indiria's avenue. We must hurry to the glass foundry. Aventil pumped his fist, a small smile creeping back to his face. Kotarian shrugged. The rich boy insists he spotted some clue. He won't tell me what, but I am inclined to believe him. Aventil hustled back to his horse. By the Exalted One, I will show you. The young noble rode toward the foundry a few blocks over, and the others followed. They arrived at the brick building, which from the outside appeared as silent as every other building on the street. Tovano is in there. I'm certain of it. Aventil slammed his fist into his palm. Isabella squinted through the foundry's darkened window. How can you be so sure? I see nothing out of the ordinary. Aventil took the group to the side door. Because Kotarian and I saw 2 glass factory workers go inside, dressed for a day's work in a dangerous environment. They wore thick aprons and heavy gloves, exactly the type of thing you would wear if you made glass for a living. Yes, and so? Kotarian wondered. Even in this madness, we have witnessed people attempting to go about their routine lives. If these 2 are glassmakers, why wouldn't they go to work? Aventil smiled and raised a finger knowingly. Yes, it would be normal to see workers entering a glass-making factory. But I know something you both don't. The Makedi glass foundry closed more than a month ago. Its owners have kept this news a secret, as they are trying to sell the business, and fear that knowledge of their financial hardship would drive down the asking price to sell. Umra raised her thin eyebrows. Yeah, I bet there's two of those folks my barkeep friend Leafy was talking about. Strange folk showing up here in the factory district in recent months, dressed to work but not mingling with the other workers. That actually makes sense, rich boy. How do you know that old bag of bones didn't simply get lost? Tovano is too resourceful for that. Isabella shook her head. He would have found us by now, if he was able. Kotarian shrugged. Well, if we are dealing with Salandrian's jackals, they will have shielded the door with magic. So how do we get inside? Isabella bit her thumbnail as she concentrated. A good question, Kotarian. Umra, I do not suppose there is a servant's entrance here, too. No, your majesty. Most of the workers just go in this door here. But I do have an idea. As you no doubt know, every wagon and cart that leaves a factory like this one must pay a tax to the crown. That's right, Aventil said. The House of Commerce levies a tax on every load of goods made in Imarina. Aye, but this foundry is real old. Centuries ago, places like this here in Naseem used to get around paying the tax by sneaking goods through underground tunnels and out of the city. Until one day, the river overflowed after a heavy rain. The tunnels flooded, and over 100 folks died. Even though they were servant class, that was more than could be ignored. That is when Queen Imarina, my ancestor, ordered that Naseem tunnels closed, Isabella interjected. Absolutely, your majesty. But them tunnels is still here. When I lived on the streets, me and my friends used to hide from the constables. And for other purposes I'd rather not mention in noble company. Remind me to tell you about 'em in the day's book. We never came down to the tunnels this far down Queen Indiria Avenue, but we can get inside that way. Aventil threw up an open hand. Slow down, Umra. That's if the entrance hasn't been bricked over, or the tunnel filled in with dirt. One problem at a time, Isabella responded. We must try the tunnels. This may be our only way to save Tovano. Umra took the group to a boarded-up brick building down the block. Umra explained that the constables covered the windows and doors with boards, which would get pulled off by people looking to get inside, until the boards went up again. Sometimes folks without homes come here for shelter. As Umra spoke, Bach and Aventil pried back the heavy boards across one of the broken windows. Kotarian begged off from helping.
A splinter could impact my ability to cast spells, and then where would you all be?
Once they cleared the window, the group crawled through the opening, with Aventil and Umra leading the way into the darkness of the abandoned factory. Isabella and Kotarian spoke lantern spells. Cones of light sprouted from their upturned palms, revealing dozens of wine bottles and piles of discarded rags on the well-worn, dust-coated bricks. The factory floor itself contained no sign of its former use, with anything of value having long disappeared. Spider webs hung everywhere. Bach walked through one and frantically pulled the strand off his face. Squee! A mouse ran by the group to its hiding place between two loose bricks, running across the toe of Isabella's boot on its way. The princess didn't scream or complain, but Bach saw her entire body shudder. Umar ran to the back of the dark factory and yanked up a pile of canvas tarps. "We're in luck. The entrance is still here." She pointed to a stack of old planks uncovered when she pulled away the tarps. When Bach pulled the boards away, dozens of roaches scurried across the floor, fleeing the light being cast by the surprised sorcerers. He heaved the boards to the side and revealed an ancient stone hole in the floor of the factory. That dank, rotting odor wafting up from the tunnel nearly knocked Bach to the ground. Kotarian grimaced.
"By Hadranian's horrifying halitosis! Could you have taken us to a more dreadful place, Umra?"
"I didn't build these tunnels, nor did folk like me want 'em built." "No, that would be my ancestors. Or those like them, sadly." Aventil stood in the entrance to the tunnel. Despite the near-total darkness, Kotarian and Isabella's spells revealed a small flight of stone steps leading down to a water-covered floor. "Must have flooded during the last storm. Doesn't look more than ankle deep, though. We should be able to wade through to the foundry, as long as the tunnel isn't blocked." "Then what are we all waiting for? All in!" Aventil bounded down the steps and splashing into the fetid water. "You heard him. No point in waiting." Isabella gingerly stepped off the stairs and into the water. The algae-coated tunnel was only about 5 feet tall, which wasn't much of a problem for Bach, Isabella, and Umra, but Aventil and Kotarian had to crouch uncomfortably low to avoid banging their heads on the ceiling. The group moved forward as quickly as they could through the narrow darkness. "You might want to watch out for snakes." Bach cringed. When he was around 7 summers, he and Yata were playing in a creek when he encountered a cottonmouth viper. Had Yata not scared it off with a stick, he likely would have been bitten. But I can't hide behind my older sister now. "We're here." Ubra pointed up another set of steps to a boarded-up entrance to the tunnel's roof. Aventil tested the weight of the boards. "It's too heavy to lift, and we'll need to move fast, in case they hear us."
"I can move it."
Kotarian's hand glowed blue-green.
"Anything to get us out of this swampy, stinking crypt."
Aventil nodded and nocked an arrow. Bach started to draw his sword, but figured his rudimentary magical skills may be of more help than his rudimentary swordsmanship skills. "Okay." "Now," Isabella whispered. Kotarian's spell deftly lifted the heavy wooden cover over the mouth of the tunnel. They carefully stepped out into the basement of the foundry. Stacks of crates filled with jars and bottles stood taller than a man's head, and created a labyrinth leading to the stairs up. Other than a small amount of light coming from the stairwell, the basement was nearly as dark as the shoe factory, and just as unoccupied. Bach exhaled. "With any luck, maybe we can get Tovano out without a fight." You obviously have never been a sailor, my friend. Aventil patted Bach on the shoulder. If you were, you wouldn't tempt the gods of fate and luck. Unfortunately, that warning proved prophetic. As they were about to climb out of the basement, a voice behind them cried,
Over here! Someone's over here!
A man rushed toward them across the dark basement. Bach spotted the distinctive glint of light on metal and heard the unmistakable sound of a blade being drawn from a scabbard. Aventil shot an arrow, which found its mark. The man died instantly, but his momentum carried him into a stack of crates, which crashed the stone floor. He groaned. If they didn't know we were here before, they certainly do now. Up the stairs! They did as he said, only to find 2 more guards standing at the top of the stairwell on the foundry's main floor.
Intruders! Kill them!
One of the guards threw a spear down toward the group. Bach instinctively flinched, but Isabella flicked her wrist and an eldritch ribbon of energy, almost resembling a translucent blue-green hand, snatched the spear from the air and snapped it like a small twig. Aventil then dispatched one of the guards with a second arrow, while Kotarian cast a spell on the other. The man's mouth opened and eyes opened wide. In seconds, he was dead, encased in a thin layer of ice, his body completely frozen solid.
Valarian's frigid fatality. I've been waiting for a chance to use that one.
Admire your handiwork later, Kotarian. We must go, now. But even in the chaos, Isabella turned to Umra and said, Sweet girl, I need you to stay here. For all your courage, you are neither a warrior nor a sorcerer, and if you are in the battle, I shall be distracted. Will do, your majesty. Now go get them bastards. With the need for subtlety gone, the group raced up the steps and into the main factory floor. There they found the Scions of Sonorian waiting. Salandrian stood flanked by 2 other sorcerers. 2 burly guards, swords drawn and shields up, stood between them and the stairwell entry. Oil lanterns ringed the perimeter of the dust-covered floor, casting gloomy shadows on stacked wooden crates and empty work tables. Kotarian's face wrinkled into a snarl when he saw the Scions, one tall, gangly young man and the other a short, squat young woman with close-cropped blonde hair.
Spalonian, Nerugian, 2 more traitors. How dare you turn your backs on our country, your house, your siblings?
His hands crackled with magical energy. In response, the 3 Scions prepared their first wave of attacks too.
We are the loyalists here, Kotarian. Loyal to Imarinian customs, not to some misguided house that lost its way many years ago, or a royal family that openly carouses with servants.
Salandrian practically spat the word servants.
You could have joined us, but Salandrian knew you couldn't be trusted.
Kotarian rolled his eyes.
Join you? You 3 pretenders are about to get a lesson in magic from the shining light of Imarina's House of Magic.
Kotarian lashed forward with a wave of pure mystical force. At first, it appeared he would overpower the trio of Scion sorcerers, but Salandrian, Spalonian, and Nerugian countered, and not only stopped the momentum of Kotarian's spell, but reversed its momentum, pushing the wave back toward Kotarian. Aventil fired a series of arrows at the trio, but they deflected the shafts, even as they drove Kotarian backward. Isabella turned to Bach. We need to help him, but first we must deal with the guards. If they catch us casting spells against the Scion sorcerers, they will cut us down. Bach remembered the pyromancy spell that he and Tovano had worked on. Flames danced forth from his hands, but the guards were ready. Their iron shields blocked the blast of fire, which dissipated when Bach's confidence waned. But Isabella kept calm and spoke an incantation as the guards charged her with swords raised over their heads. Lightning shot forth from both her hands. While the guards' metal shields proved an effective defense against fire, they were deadly liability against electricity. Both men dropped to the floor dead, just feet from where Bach, Isabella, and Aventil stood. "Remind me never to argue with you again," Aventil joked. For a split second, Isabella returned his warm gaze for the first time since their dispute, then steeled herself for the remaining battle, which promised to be far more difficult. "They have 3 saucers, and we have 3 saucers, plus the best archer in Imarina. The odds are in our favor." I'm not truly a sorcerer." "Not yet," Bach offered. "You are now. Consider it a battlefield promotion. For Imarina! For King Isbiano!" Isabella sent a spell of pure magical force toward the trio of Scion sorcerers, who had Kotarian pinned against the foundry's brick wall, his defenses nearly exhausted. The attack threw Salandrian and her co-conspirators off balance, allowing Kotarian to regroup.
"Well, Princess Pretender has joined the fray,"
Salandrian crowed.
"I'm surprised you weren't busy ministering to peasants. That is your favorite pastime, I believe. But if your master was any indication, breaking you won't be a problem. We'll even let your serving-class friends bury you in the royal gardens beside your mother."
Isabella's nostrils flared. A wave of fire, far bigger than the one Bach had been able to conjure, rushed forth and nearly engulfed Salandrian. She barely threw up a mystic shield in time to avoid being incinerated by Isabella's spell. Bach paired off with Spolonian, the tall man, while Kotarian battled the short young woman, Nerugian. Aventil stood back, waiting for his opportunity to strike.
"Eek! Get your hands off me, villain!"
Umra's leather-lunged scream echoed up the stairwell.
"Go help her, Aventil. We can handle these 3.
Bach heard his friend's feet clomp against the foundry's brick floor, but he dared not turn his attention away from the scion across from him. "You told Isabella you would stand with her until the end." He pushed up his sleeves. Time to put that promise to the test. Well, everyone, what do you think? Will Bach and company be able to survive against the 3 Scions of Sonorian? So now it is 3 sorcerers to 3 sorcerers. Bach's side might have the more powerful 1 sorcerer, but Bach himself is barely trained. He knows, 2 spells? Not exactly what I would call trained. Isabella? Probably a match-off for what she's against. So let's see how this plays out. I mean, now let's be a little honest here. They're going to win, but let's find out how it happens. Here we go with Chapter 37. Isabella found herself too concerned with fending off Salandrian's relentless attacks to notice Aventil's disappearance. A hurricane spell threw Isabella across the factory floor. From a seated position, she had to dive for cover from the razor-sharp pincer appendage Salandrian conjured next. Bach fared even worse. He tried to replicate the attack that had served him so well against Kaz Kosan, but when he hurled a crate of magic jars at Spolonian, the sorcerer smiled and reversed the spell, sending the crate flying back into Bach's midsection. He sprawled across the brick floor as the breath left his body. Dazed, Bach pushed himself back up onto his hands and knees. He couldn't beat Spolonian at high magic. The more skilled Scion sorcerer could counter any of Bach's spells. Now he smirked as he stood over Bach.
"I do not know who you truly are, or how you learned to cast spells, peasant. But it matters not. You and your friends came all this way, fought so hard, only to fail."
His hands began to glow. Bach crawled across the brick floor looking for some way to prolong his life. Then, the most curious thought, and perhaps the most inopportune time, ran through his mind. He spotted 3 maple sprouts growing between the aged bricks of the building. No doubt someone walked in with a seed pod stuck to their pants leg. Then the seeds fell between the cracks between bricks. Notoriously hardy, maple seeds could sprout just about anywhere. Nurturing plants was one of his main duties as a healer. A foundation of folk magic involved encouraging plants to grow. That is exactly what he did to the maple sprout under Spolonian. Except this time, he imbued high magic into the folk magic spell. The result proved even more spectacular than Bach dared to hope. In less than a second, the 2-inch seedling expanded into a fully grown maple tree, 50 feet tall. The tree, and Spolonian, smashed through the foundry's tin roof, leaving a massive tree-filled hole in the ceiling. Bach hoped the sorcerer hadn't been killed, but he felt sure the fight had been taken out of the man. Not bad for a beginner. After days of feeling overwhelmed and confused by his new abilities, his chest swelled as he examined the fully formed tree growing through the factory floor. Meanwhile, Salandrian kept Isabella on the defensive. The princess had a dozen or more counterattacks at the ready, but Salandrian's all-out assault wouldn't allow her the opportunity to use any of them. Instead, Isabella focused on blocking the spells that came one after another. Sweat streamed down her face and matted her hair to her head.
Mind if I interrupt this dance?
Despite being in an intense battle with Narangian himself, Kotarian walked up behind Isabella and spoke to her over his shoulder. In between his jousting with his former classmate, he found time to throw a white globe of magical energy at the foundry's ceiling high above Salandrian's head. The globe exploded into a flare of light, creating the effect of staring directly into a sun on the bright summer's day. Aye! The spell broke Salandrian's concentration enough to give Isabella a brief respite.
Okay, Your Majesty. I want us to switch. You go on the offensive against Narangian. Leave Salandrian to me.
No, Salandrian said...
Exactly. Salandrian said.
Kotarian turned his back to Narangian and forced Isabella to block the Scion's incoming attack, lest Kotarian be struck by Sonorian's sublime spear. She gasped at her colleague's fearlessness, or perhaps foolishness.
Tovano gave you plenty of magical knowledge, Your Majesty, but he failed to impart a predatory instinct. I was schooled in an eat-or-be-eaten environment, and I've dealt with bullies most of my life, to the point where I may have become one, I am sorry to say. I heard what Salandrian said about your mother. As verbal warfare goes, it was hopelessly crude, but she knew it would make you careless. Let me deal with my former classmate. Believe me, there's nothing this dork can say that I haven't already heard 1,000 times before.
He stepped forward to meet Salandrian before Isabella could reply. Narangian smiled as she waved her hands above her head to cast another spell. The Scion stood between towering stacks of loaded crates.
What an honor! I get to slay Imarina's crown princess, the beloved and beautiful Isabella. But don't worry, Salandrian will allow you a royal funeral when I...
Be silent! With a wave of Isabella's hand, the heavy crates beside Narangian toppled, crushing the Scion under hundreds of pounds of glass and wood. For once, Kotarian didn't want to fight. Keeping his shield spells up, he engaged his opponent with words, not sorcery.
Salandrian, I plead with you, do not do this. Not that I particularly like you, but we have been classmates since our time as apprentices. Doesn't that bond mean anything to you?"
Alandrian threw her head back and laughed.
Ha! The House of Magic has rotted from the inside. The Scions of Sonorian don't wish to destroy the house. We want to return it to its rightful glory, and with it, Imarina, dragging it by the neck if need be.
A bolt of energy sizzled toward Kotarian, illuminating the massive wood and brick space. His shields brushed the attack aside, and it shattered a stack of crated jars into a cloud of wood and glass splinters. The scent of thunderstorms filled the space around him.
Yes, yes, the true path and all that retrograde nonsense. But you lived in Sonorian Square for years. You studied in our libraries, learned under our teachers, grumbled with your classmates in the commons, just as I did. Your actions betray the house and all of us who sacrificed beside you.
Betray? You do not know of what you speak, Kotarian. The house turned its back on us long ago. You more than anyone. If only you knew.
Enlighten me.
He lobbed a blue-green globe of energy toward Alandrian's shields. She blocked the spell with a nonchalant gesture, continuing their cat-and-mouse standoff. She prowled the wood-plank floors, eyes focused on her former classmate.
Kotarian, my dear classmate, why were you chosen for this mission?
Why? Because I am the house's shining light.
He tapped the pin on his chest vigorously.
I'm the top sorcerer in the acolyte class. Why else would they have chosen me above all my classmates?
You really don't know, do you?
She propped her hand under her chin to demonstrate her incredulity.
Kotarian, you were picked because you were deemed expendable. The house leadership knew this mission could turn deadly. They were deeply worried by our actions at Oso Creek, despite what they told naive King Isbiano. If one of our ranks had to die, Kotarian, they wanted it to be you.
Kotarian's eyes narrowed.
Salandrian. He sent me to die because he sees me as a threat.
Alandrian laughed again.
Salandrian wasn't even consulted about this decision. No, Leronian and Karagian decided that if any of our member had to die, it should be you.
Impossible!
He dropped his shields.
Didn't you hear what I said? I am the...
Alandrian waved her hands around her face.
The shining light. Top of the class. Yes, we've heard you crow for years. But dear Kotarian, we never liked you. No one would care if you died.
With that, Alandrian projected a beam of solid magical energy at Kotarian. Balerian's barbarous bolt. The beam caught him squarely in the chest and knocked him backward into a pile of crates. Kotarian had been able to generate a last-moment shield spell. That alone prevented his sternum from being crushed. As it was, though, his torso screamed in excruciating pain. The force of impact knocked all the wind from his body. He laid on that hard floor and forced his brain to remain conscious.
You got me with that one,
he coughed out. Rather than reply, she unleashed a second beam of energy. Kotarian didn't have the chance to use a shield spell, but dodged the fatal blow using a wind whisper spell. Or Juvanian's judicious jump, as it was known by the house. He crawled on his hands and knees behind another stack of crates. An undignified tactic for the house's shining light, but necessary. Kotarian needed to recover his wits before re-engaging with his former classmate.
Reduced to hiding behind boxes? For shame, Kotarian.
He heard a high-pitched whine, and a half-second later, a stack of crates 10 feet to his right exploded into a mist of wood and glass splinters. If he had still been behind those crates when the spell struck. Kotarian inhaled deeply and soaked his lungs with stale air. He then jumped to his feet, firing Malarian's momentous meteor at Salandrian. A pebble-sized rock, engulfed in a tiny flame, appeared from the tip of his index finger. It grew exponentially as it surged toward the surprised Salandrian, eventually reaching a full diameter of 3 feet. Unfortunately for Kotarian, she split the burning hunk of rock into fragments with a counterspell. He was not so fortunate on her next attack. His attempt counter missed, and her blast destroyed the crates directly in front of Kotarian. His shields held, mostly. It protected him from the brunt of the explosion, but glass shrapnel sliced through his right cheek, shoulder, and thigh, staining his gray tunic and pants with blood. He touched his bleeding face, which burned and throbbed. He tapped his star pin and muttered, "Think, stupid man. Why did you spend all those late nights studying if not for this moment? The answer is there. You must be smart enough to find it." And then he did. Kotarian stood up from behind the last stack of crates still standing, his hands in the air. "Hold, Salandrian. You are improved, to be sure. Certainly better than I give you credit for. But before I remove this pin and place it on your black jacket, I have one final question. Think back to Session 4, Weeks 3 and 4. What did we learn about then?" She cocked her head to the side.
What in the stars are you playing at, Kotarian? Do you think this some academic exercise? This is life or death, and we know which card you have pulled.
He shrugged.
Well, it doesn't really matter."
Kotarian quickly dropped his hands and expended the last bit of energy he could muster to generate a giant iron javelin from the ether and shoot it at Salandrian. She gasped, but then knocked the deadly missile above her head and behind her with a last-second shield spell.
That was your last chance, Kotarian. It was a good one. Palaxian's preeminent projectile. It failed, and now you.
Salandrian only had a second to look down at the giant iron javelin protruding point first through her chest, having circled back and struck her from behind. She fell face forward and landed on the foundry floor with a pronounced thump.
"Not Palaxian's preeminent projectile,"
Kotarian wiped blood from his cheek.
"Dolarian's devilish deceit. Session 4, Weeks 2, 3, and 4. We learned misdirection spells. I suppose one of us paid attention."
And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, we have reached the end of our reading for this evening. I hope you guys have enjoyed this session of The Blacksmith's Boy by Bruce Buchanan. Remember, all of the recorded chapters will be available on the YouTube channel by tomorrow morning, youtube.com/@SirArminius. Up through chapter 31 is already there, and chapters 32 through 38 will be available as soon as I can upload them. You can also stop out and support the author by picking up the book on Amazon.com. You can get a cheaper ebook on wildinkpublishing.com, or you can stop by the author's website, Bruce Buchanan, author. Thank you to all of you. The greatest gift that you can give me is the gift of your time, and I appreciate that you gave me the gift of yours this evening, whether it was for 5 minutes or for the full stream. Thank you. If you have not already done so, I would implore you to stop out to the YouTube channel and subscribe. It's free. youtube.com/@SirArminius. That way you will be notified when I am going live, or when I post new videos. I hope you guys all have a wonderful rest of your weekend, if you get a long weekend like I do. And if not, a fantastic week ahead. I'll be back on Tuesday to continue reading The Blacksmith's Boy. Have a great evening, everybody. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.